Now that we have our header, the next thing we're going to build is our sign-in page. Now, if we look at our finished application and we look at the sign-in page, we see that there is a sign-up section and a sign-in section. They're quite similar with their own custom form input component and a custom button component. So before we attach any of the functionality to this component, let's take a look at what functionality we have available. So we can actually sign in using an email and password, and that sign-in is going to be based off of the accounts that we're signing up using this form. So if a new user signs up using this form, we are able to sign in with that account. Alternatively, if this step is too extensive, then we can just sign in with Google. And by using sign in with Google, we load any Gmail accounts that the user is currently logged into, or they can add another Gmail account and log in that way and authenticate into our application with very minimal effort. So let's begin. How do we build this? Well, first, let's just set up the page. So let's go back to our application and let's build a sign in and sign up page. So let's create our folder, sign in and sign up. Let's copy that text because we are going to have to write this twice, .component.jsx, and then also .styles.sass. Now, we just have to import in all of the usual things that we always have to, including our style sheet. And then we are going to use a functional component here. And the reason we're going to use a functional component and not a stateful class component is because we're going to keep all of that on our sign in and sign up components respectively. And then we will just write sign in for now. Export default. Export our component. Save it. And now import it into our app.js. Oh, these are leftovers that we don't need from our import. So let's pages. And now let's duplicate this route for sign in using our new component. And now if we navigate to sign in, we see our page. So now let's build our sign in component first before we build our sign up component. Now, the reason we're going to build our sign in component first is because we're going to set up our Firebase database in the next section. And that is what we're going to use in order to handle any of our authentication as well as signing up users. So sign in is easier to explain if we do it with Firebase first, and I'll show you why. So let's first just make our files. Sign in.styles.sass. And for our sign in, we are going to use a class component because we have to store what the user's typing in. So let's do class sign in extends react.component. And in our constructor, we are going to need access to state. And on our state, what we're going to store is an empty string for our email and an empty string for our password. In our render, we are going to return a div that contains our entire sign-in component. And in it will be an h2 for the title. So here we're going to say, I already have an account. And then let's use a span for our subtext where we will say sign in with your email and password. Awesome. Now for our actual form, we're going to use a native form element. And in it, so we have custom components here that we're not going to use yet. We're going to code those out later. But first, I'm just going to put in an input with a name of email and a value of email, this.state.email. And then I'm going to set required to be true. And then we're going to add a label that says email. And we're going to repeat this twice so that this one will say password. This one's type will be email as well. And this one's type will be password. And then at the end, we will have a input with a type of submit. And here we will set the value to be submit form. Let's export this out as the default. So this is all just very basic setup for now, right? We don't actually have any of the bindings to the code. But what we're going to need to add is we are going to add on our form an onSubmit function that calls our method handleSubmit, which for now will simply prevent the default submit action from firing because we want full control over exactly what this submit is going to do. But for now, what we'll do is we will prevent it and then we will clear out our fields. So we'll set our email and our password back to an empty string. And that's what we will pass here. handleSubmit. And as for our actual inputs, what we're going to do is we are going to set a onChange value to point to our handle change function, which also again takes an event, except for this we are going to pull both the value and the name off of our event.target. The event target will end up being our input element itself, and we want the name value that we just set as well as the actual value on that target that they've just typed in. And what we're going to do is we're going to dynamically set our state so that it sets that name. So it'll render whatever that value that comes in will be. If name is password, it will say password and then point to the value that they typed in. And then the same will apply for email. If it's the email, then this event targets.name will be email, and then that value will be what they're typing in there. So this way we can pass the same function into the same input. And this is awesome because we don't have to write separate functions that do pretty much the same thing by dynamically setting our property value. Now let's import this into our sign-in page. Sign in from components, sign in, and let's just render this out and take a look. Awesome. So there we go. There's our form. We hit our submit form. It clears the fields. Exactly what we're looking for. Okay. Now let's actually style this and attach the functionality.